We have time at the end for questions that you may have. I'm going to pose a question here in just a little bit that will seek some of your expertise on for us, because Rich and I rely really on interacting with our counseling colleagues who are working in schools or on college campuses to really help us stay abreast of what's going on for you out there. So great, thanks. All right. So I don't know if this popped up in my news feed last week. This was on CBS News with a headline of college application slide, especially for low-income students. And when you look through this article, and some of you probably already can put faces to these statistics, unfortunately, but FAFSA completion was down 16% nationwide, and in Massachusetts specifically, that's 5.1%. And early decision applications are down 8% overall, and 16% for those with a fee waiver who are more than likely to be lower SES first generation college going students. So our most disadvantaged students seem to be foregoing their college going plans because of the pandemic and the financial ramifications that has placed on many families here. So as you've heard many times, we're in uncharted waters with this, as are students and families. So some of them are waiting for the waters to settle a little bit before they wade into those into the going to college process, which is unfortunate, because we also know that as people delay their plans, other parts of their lives take over, and they may never realize their college going plans. So so this is early statistics, but startling nonetheless. So
just real quick,
yeah.
it's a technical issue. Now on my side, when I see your PowerPoint, it's only on half of my screen, and the right side is kind of blank. It just has no messages. It's like maybe what would be the chat or something. I don't know if that's just mine, if other people are.
Oh, are other people seeing the full screen, or? Oh, the screen sharing went away. Hold on. Oh, it says I'm sharing my screen.
Okay. Maybe I don't know if it was just me.
You see it fine? Okay. Oh, okay. It's just you, Rich. Whew, thank goodness. All right. Hopefully you can fix that. But so applying to college during COVID, there's a lot of things that are different in this. I would like you to, if you can type in the question and answer box, that would be super helpful. So what's different now? The testing policies, as you know, many colleges have gone test optional, not requiring test, the SAT or the ACT for admissions this year. So that's different this year. Who knows what that's going to translate into, right? In terms of how do you help students gauge their chances or their likelihood of acceptance at a college without the SAT scores? So that presents an additional challenge. Your ability to visit campus is obviously significantly limited now. What else is different this year from your perspective? If you can start typing some of your ideas there in the question and answer, that would be fantastic. But some of the things that are the same, as we'll see here on the next slide, the importance of the high school transcript has actually always been more important at most colleges. Things like GPA and the rigor of your academic record have always been more important than test scores anyway. So that's the same as it has always been. In addition, for students and families, this need to make an informed decision is also exists today. It existed before COVID, and as Rich said, it might even be more important now. Oh my goodness, this webinar is going downhill. Sorry about that. It's my kids' school, but they're not in school, so I don't know why they're calling me. So thank you, Kevin, for answering that question. What's different? The fewer activities in high school now, loss of clubs or chances for sports and activities and other forms of engagement.
Hello, this is Steve Meyer, Superintendent of Poynton Public Schools.
Sorry. I don't know why I can't turn this off.
Poynton Public Schools will be in a remote.
This is purposeful. We wanted to show you what real in the COVID era was.
This is pandemic living at its finest. Yes. All right.
Is your PowerPoint moving, Tim? I just see what's different, what's the same.
I didn't move it yet. Yep. Translates grading policies in high school are different. I'm seeing this with my own daughter. in school, and how it's more challenging, actually, I think, for a lot of students. And then we have those students that are falling off the radar, which you're probably more familiar with, the students that are disengaging completely from their studies, which is, if they're not graduating this year, it's going to impact their transcript, which is going to impact the kinds of colleges they can apply to. Fantastic. So feel free to keep adding things if you have more ideas. So this is, I don't know if folks have seen this. This is the NACAC State of College Admissions Survey. This is done every year by NACAC, and they update it every single year. And as you can see here, grades in all courses, grades in college prep courses, and strength of curriculum, things that are all reflected on high school transcript, are all things that have always been more important than these admissions test scores, which come in fourth here. And they have for many years. This has been the pattern. This is not new. For 2018, 2019 is when this data is from. So I think maybe that can give some comfort to people. I don't know. The fact that, yes, admission test scores not being there for a lot of colleges is a significant change, but actually the information contained on a student's high school's transcript has always been more important anyway. So I think that's comforting to me, at least a little bit, to know that they're not, the colleges are not going into completely uncharted waters here with not having SAT scores to rely on as part of their process, because this information on the high school transcript has always been more important anyway. So I thought that was just interesting to point out. We also talked about the other thing that's different is visiting a college campus. And in terms of making an informed decision, the question that we pose here is, does visiting campus help or hurt informed college decisions? And we'll start off, I don't know if Julie can you speak, or Julie cannot. Julie's audio issues are not. I'll try to do my best with sharing this story, which is Julie's story that she shared with Rich and I when we were preparing for the presentation. Julie shared that she went on a college tour when she was going through her own college process and figuring out where she wanted to apply and attend. And she went to this one university where this wonderful tour guide showed her trick for getting the cheese melted on her burgers. And it was by dipping the cheese in hot water to get it to melt on the burger. And when Julie, obviously that's not appetizing. And what happened for Julie was that it left her with an unappetizing feeling towards attending that entire college. I'm not going to name the college, but it's actually a really well-respected institution. But Julie threw it out of her list in large part because of the feelings that she left with from that visit about the wet cheese, which had nothing to do with the academic experience on campus. Maybe a little bit to do with the culinary experience, but nothing to do with the academic experience. So Julie left there with a really negative taste in her mouth, so to speak, and didn't even apply to that college. So, and then Rich has another really good example from one of his students that highlights how going on one of these campus tours or campus visits can actually get in the way of making an informed college decision.
Yeah, I just want to just add quickly. So I think one of the things, if Tim and I heard from a young person, if they said this college just feels right to me, that would, a little alarm bell would go off. And because we see too many times, it's a lot of those feelings of preferences are based on particular kinds of experiences that either go good or bad. And in the long run, it really isn't the kind of more rock bed, solid fact-based information that you'd want. So the cardio tour guide, I was talking about this in my college counseling class last year, and one of our very best graduate students, she just started laughing, and I said, well, what's going on? And she said, well, this summer before my senior in high school, I was having a really bad time. I was breaking up with my boyfriend. I was arguing with my parents, and then we decided we'd go visit this college, which was a really good college. I mean, one of those, the highly esteemed colleges. So it was, she says, it was hot. I got there, and and the tour guide we had, he sort of thought it was his cardio workout for the day. And so there were a lot of hills and a lot of stairs. And the more hills and stairs she went up, the angrier and more frustrated she got. And they finished the tour, and the mother and father looked at her and said, "So, what do you think? Great place, huh?" And she goes, "I am never going to this place, never." And it was a completely emotionally based kind of decision. When we were talking about it in class, she was saying, if I had gone back in the fall, things had worked out. I was, my senior year was going, things were better. I think this could have been, the leaves would have been turning, it would have been cooler. I could have gone there, and it would have been a great place for her to go as well.
Yeah. And to be clear, emotions are an important part of any decision-making process and are an important part of an informed decision-making process. The challenge is when the decision-making process is overruled by those emotions, as happened to Julie and as happened to Rich's student there. So what we're trying to do is to provide the kinds of objective information that can be used to balance off some of those emotional reactions so that they're not overbearing on the decision. So that's the goal here, is not to dismiss the role of emotions in decision making and to just base things on objective facts, but to use those objective facts to balance off the natural emotion-laden aspects of the college-going decision.
The work that Tim and I did, it really it was inspired by Kahneman and Tversky's Nobel Peace Prize winning research about judgment heuristics. And under conditions of uncertainty, emotions take over. And so that what the economists have found out, consumers aren't rational, and we use shortcuts to make decisions. And I believe what you can see is when you look at decision making that a lot of young people make, you can see these heuristics at work. And so it's a matter, like Tim is saying, balancing off the emotion. So what we'd like to do, if you want to go to the next slide, Tim. So we think what you can do is, it's really a balancing of these things, and that you can lead your students. So you want to go back?
Oh.
You can lead your students through a process that helps them structure the college going problem. See, it's really a self-regulated process we want to talk about, where the students have to slow down, put time and effort into it, and talk it out with their family. They really have to kind of go through that. And I guess I want to say, before I go further, let me share with you just a couple of quick my own personal biases. You don't have to share these, but about the college decision-making process and college going. First of all, selective colleges do not have a monopoly on intelligence, creativity, or the accomplishment of great things in life. Okay, you can see this. MacArthur Genius Grant Award winners come from everywhere. CEOs and CFOs of major corporations come from everywhere. I mean, if I'm being honest with myself, I probably by far the best thing I could have done coming out of high school was go to a community college for 2 years. When I sit back and look at that. This is kind of comes out of Frank Bruni's a book that he wrote, that colleges don't make you successful, you make yourself successful. That's one thing. And I think the situation we're in, there's a lot of right colleges for students. And the good news is they want your business, they want their business this year more than ever. I mean, so and I think that's where you'll see a lot of flexibility on the part of colleges when it comes to the admissions process. Okay. Go to the next one, Tim. So Tim had been working, and I've been working on the steps to success, this lead, this lead acronym: list, explore, apply, decide, and then all in a way of trying to enhance the college fit. So we know clearly from research, the more you can enhance the fit around the college decision-making, the better the chances of the young person will have in terms of being able to be retained and graduated and get what they want from that. So what you see is this pretty traditional process, funneling down process, where you've got in the United States alone, there's over 2,400 colleges. You want to come up with a process where the students need to explore, to gather and interpret facts, get down to about 8 to 12 colleges, then submit applications to about 5 to 8, and then actually get to the point of deciding on which one is best. And what we'd like to suggest that there are 8, I think we could provide evidence kind of supported data to say these eight each kind of take a piece of the pie, so to speak, that they're all important. Academic match, the cost, career match, personal match, certainty, the learning environment itself at the college, student supports that are provided, and the person's readiness, whether they're really ready to make that step. And so what we'd like to do is help young people and their families to use these 8 factors as they begin to flesh out, to go through a really systematic college search and application decision-making process. So I'm gonna go do these in clockwise here, starting with certainty. up on the top right. Now, you might not think of it this way, but I think this may be one of the most important ones. For me, one of the most distressing things about the college going across all this stuff in the last 10 to 15 years has been the rise of marketing and advertising firms, where colleges pay big dollars to brand their college. And it's clearly an intent to sway emotions and to sway judgment. And what you see is, so I'll give you an example. And you can see these on every college's websites, depending on their budget. Some are better than others, as you look at it. But here's one for you. We are the public ivy. I don't know if anybody has heard that one, but so when you think about the very first thing you see at this university is we are the public ivy. It's kind of like Harvard at half the price. How would you interpret that? You'll find others at others like, here's a statement that on one college, we call them breakthrough moments, the exact instant a light sparks on, your world opens up and the rest of your life is set in motion. It's like, whoa, $50,000 doesn't get you that per year, I'm just saying. And it also seeps into things like the offers that are made to students. For example, I know I was talking to a young woman a couple of years ago who was telling me how she got a scholarship and how this one out-of-state university really wanted her. And she showed me what it was, and I didn't say anything. I was like, great. But in fact, what the out-of-state school was doing is they were reducing the price. They were letting her go to the out-of-state school as an in-state student, but they framed it back to her as if, and she thought is, oh, well, they really want me as a scholarship student. So I think there's that advertising side that what you see is that colleges sell the illusion of certainty. If you come to our place, everything is good. And we just know that's not the case, because even at the best of places, everybody doesn't graduate. There's lots of things that you need to take into account. And we would say to balance this off with some objective data. What's the retention rate data? What's the graduation rate data? What's the alumni earnings that you can see? Because all of this information is now freely available for you. And there's on their free websites, and Tim, we're going to talk about this in a minute. The second thing is cost. One of the nicest things I can honestly say is I'm beyond the years. I'm never ever going to incur more college debt in my life. I mean, it's clearly one of the most difficult challenges that face us. And actually, I had a parent I was talking to showed me his Excel kind of graph that he made up for his daughter, and we were basically figuring out what the monthly debt is going to be that she would be paying back if she went in the different options, and sort of to start to take a look at, to help parents not jump over the financial cliff, because parents, as a parent with kids going to college, I was very vulnerable about wanting to do the best and all of that, and to help. And in some ways, you really need to help parents kind of relax and kind of pull back and say, what's really the best decision here? The third one would be academic match. A simple thing like the majors. We know a high school senior last year who wants to become a registered nurse, but she was choosing to go to a college where she could kind of keep her high school identity and run track. They didn't have a nursing program. So in her mind, she was going to go to that 4-year school, and then she was going to go to nursing school afterwards. When the parents found out about it, they went in a different direction with that. The fourth is career match. So, we know that internships and things like that are very, very important to think about. Is the college really helping and supporting the students' career developments? Mentorships, does the school have a mentorship program? Colleges and businesses have found that those are very, very important in terms of helping with the transition from graduation out into the world of work. And we give you a little a factoid from IES statistics so you have a 4-year college graduates after paying for 4 years and graduating 4 years later. So if you graduated at maybe 21 or 22, now you're 26. Well, less than half of all those young people 4 years later still were saying that they were in what we would call a stabilized career path. In other words, a career direction that they planned on continuing for the long run. They were working, but they were still scrambling. Now, the fifth one would be personal match. How the colleges match your personality, the size of the colleges, the distance from home, the diversity. This is an area where it seems to be most of the search engines that you're going to use, they tend to emphasize this one the most. That's the first thing they do. Well, how far away from home do you want to go? What's the diversity that you want? That kind of thing. And I would say to be careful about those because these things change. We're very adaptable. I mean, we can talk ourselves into some things, but the reality is you can find small communities at large universities as well as big communities at small colleges. So there's more diversity that way. Learning environment. What kind of classes is the young person going to be going into? Are you going to get large lecture halls for the first 2 years versus writing intensive programs? And is the young person recognizing of their own learning style and strategies? My youngest daughter went to a school. She found out that it was writing intensive, and that very first week she was at the writing center, kind of that self-advocacy side about 80 to 85% of all of her academic work had to do with writing intensive kinds of activities. They didn't do multiple choice tests. They didn't have large lecture halls. It was writing and discussion was what it was. Student support. What kind of counseling and advising, tutoring, the Writing Center, career and alumni services. If you look at UMass Amherst retention rate data, it's really good. It's about 91%. Which is really quite high. And a big reason for it is that in the time that I was there since 2006, we placed a big emphasis on improving our student services. There's some really good student service. And the last one is readiness. I think we have to be honest, to be successful at the particular college, do you know what you have to do? Are you prepared to do it, and are you willing to do that? Actually, in some of Tim and my research, we found that the person making a genuine commitment to graduate from that college, that was the best predictor of college retention. That little thing stood up very, very well to test scores and other kinds of things that you would use. So I guess I just want to give you a quick example. This is a true example. I did this 8-step process with a student in one of my classes last year. She was a mother of 11th grader. The 11th grader is on the autism spectrum. And so she was basically looking at what's the best college for my daughter in a year, kind of getting ready for that. So the first thing, she got all excited because when she started this, she had heard about this special program. It was out of state. It was at if I mention the name, you'd recognize it, at State University. And they had great marketing and awesome brochures. They had slick marketing. And it was about an 8-hour drive from their home. And this is clearly a child that's never left on her own. So that whole side of that is going to be a big issue. So she was all excited about that. But as she systematically kind of went through the different steps, what she discovered, when she discovered more about the actual programs and services at this college, plus there was a $25,000 fee to be in this special program. So she'd pay about $55,000 for a room and board, $25,000 on top of that. So essentially, it was a huge price tag. And as she dug into it, what she learned is that the best program in terms of the services for her daughter, the cost was less than 30 minutes away from her front door. And there was no doubt about it. I mean, she had the factual information to say, oh, this is how the weekends would be handled. And this is not only, there's someone who's going to be there in the class with my daughter doing these kinds of things. And actually, that place was Fitchburg State. So she did this big national search, and it was Fitchburg State had by far the best that matched her daughter's needs. But it took her going through a systematic process to uncover that kind of information. So that's what I'm saying about, as the dilemma for us parents is that we're willing to jump off the financial cliff, in terms of trying to do what's best for our kids.
Great. So a little bit more. So thank you, Rich. A little bit more about why did we develop this LEAD process, and in particular the 8 critical perspectives. Some of the research that Rich and I did a few years ago focused on this notion of college knowledge, and we looked at how much college knowledge students had And long story short, we found out that most students, when you gave them a test of their college knowledge, were failing miserably. We did this research with graduating high school seniors in April or May of their senior year, so they'd already made their college decisions, all their applications and whatnot, and their score ranged, the average score was a 42% correct. So there's a lot of people are making these decisions about which college is right for them with very limited knowledge about the process. One of the items, so there's actually 75 items on the college admissions knowledge evaluation, which if you're interested in taking a look at it, if you visit our website at collegesanity.com, you can take a look at it there for yourself. There's an interactive version of it there. But one of the questions that I like to talk about is what is demonstrated interest? So as you know, you likely know, demonstrated interest is when you contact a college or university to gain more information about them. We had about a third of the students got this one correct. They knew what it was. So 2/3 of the students didn't know what demonstrated interest was. And as you know, demonstrated interest is a factor it's a non-academic factor that some colleges, and I might even say many colleges, use when making decisions about whether or not to admit a student. So in other words, visiting a campus or following them on social media, following the college on social media might actually influence the students' chances of acceptance at colleges that use demonstrated interest as a factor. And the fact is that students who don't know what demonstrated interest is and are applying to colleges that use it as a factor are at a distinct disadvantage compared to students who do. We have a really quick story here. Rich and I know a student whose brother used to visit her at college. High-performing student. He got accepted at, was it MIT? He got accepted at Tufts, and he got rejected from UMass Amherst. Why? The honors college at UMass Amherst. But why? In part because we didn't ask an admissions officer, but because he knew the campus and he visited his sister there regularly, he didn't feel a need to go do the tour of the campus. So I think when UMass Amherst looked at his application, and this is UMass Amherst common data set information, which indicates that level of applicants' interest here on the bottom is something that they consider as an important factor when making admissions decisions. This applicant did not show up as demonstrating any interest in UMass Amherst. So even though he was academically qualified, he was denied admission because ostensibly UMass Amherst said he's not likely to come here, so we're not going to admit him to begin with. So, and again, this is UMass Amherst. Generally speaking, private colleges tend to use demonstrated interest more frequently than public colleges do, but there are public colleges that use it. So, and assuming that you're all familiar with the common data set, the way you find the common data set information about a college is just usually through a Google search. It's usually housed on the college's website, and you can find it if you just do a Google search for the college's name with common data set. You'll be brought to the page if the college participates in the common data set program. It's a voluntary initiative the colleges can choose to participate in or not participate in. If they choose to participate in it, they make this information publicly available. So what do you do if you have a student who's applying to a college that doesn't participate in the common data set initiative, and you want to know if the college uses demonstrated interest as a factor? You contact the admissions counselor. They're more than happy to share with you this information, but on the other hand, they're also not going to advertise that they're using demonstrated interest as one of the factors, the non-academic factors when making admissions decisions. So, so how can you promote informed college decision making, particularly during COVID-19? This is during any time, but it's particularly relevant during COVID-19. We've come up with a list essentially of some questions, 7 questions in particular, that can encourage students and families to be exploratory and planful as they consider every college that they're thinking of applying to and or attending. We can also help them, help our students and families be informed consumers by recognizing some of the common myths and debunking some of the common myths that they may have about college. So I'm going to go, we have got about 15 minutes here before I want to switch to the question and the answer portion. So I may go through some of these a little bit quickly, but So these are the 7 questions. We're going to go through these one by one in the next series of slides. All of these questions can be answered on free websites that are mostly paid for by your tax dollars. The College Navigator, you're probably familiar with. The College Scorecard, you're also probably familiar with. The Net Price Calculator, I'm sure you're familiar with. You can find, we have links to those things here, and we'll post this presentation here, the slides for this here shortly. And then another one that you may not be familiar with, but has a lot of the same kinds of information as those 3 websites is College Results Online, which is a website that's put together and run by the Education Trust, which is a wonderful organization. So we also have our very own MEFA Pathways. The MEFA Pathways tool has evolved over the years and provides some of this information as well. I know Julie has been working with her colleagues on trying to add even more information, some of this objective fact-based information, to make that available in the MEFA Pathway. But the MEFA Pathway is another tool that's at your disposal. It's freely available to anybody in the state. It's actually freely available to anybody in the country, really, right? You don't check residency when people sign up for this, but it is a Massachusetts-oriented kind of website. So, and certainly links to the unique financial opportunities that are available here in the state. So, Julie, I was going to give Julie a moment to talk about this, but are you able to talk? Julie is unable to talk. All right. Hopefully I did that justice. Okay. All right, so the first question that we ask here is, how supported and satisfied are freshmen? We can get to the answer to that from the College Navigator. You'll find this under the retention and graduation rate section. I like to think of this retention rate as the freshman satisfaction score for a college, because it tells you how many freshmen were satisfied and supported enough with the college or at the college to return as sophomores. That's what this retention rate tells you. It's the number of freshmen, full-time freshmen that return as sophomores. So a very telling statistic. You'll find that there are places, the more selective a college is, generally speaking, the higher their retention rate is. So when you get into the Harvards and the Tufts and the Boston colleges and those kinds of places, they're going to have retention rates that are well above 90%, maybe even 95%. But when you get to the colleges that most of the rest of us attend, you're going to see much more variability in those retention rates. So it's definitely something, a nice objective piece of information that should be considered alongside all the other information about the college. And I put that as question number 1 because, again, that's really, it's telling you about how satisfied and supported freshmen are at that college. And if you're considering a college that has a lower retention rate, that doesn't mean because it has the lowest retention rate of all the colleges on your list, it doesn't mean that that's the college that, or that you shouldn't attend that college. It just means that you should get answers to some more questions about that. Like, ask the admissions counselor about their retention rate and what they may be doing to try and increase that. I bet they have an answer, but again, the admissions counselors are not going to volunteer that kind of information. But in my experience, they're more than ready and willing to answer those kinds of questions if they're asked. They'll have an answer for those kinds of questions. They are very aware of what their retention rates are. And again, you can find this information in the College Navigator under that retention and graduation rates section. So relatedly, how many students make it to graduation? And this, I circled here the percentage of full-time first-time students who graduated in the either 4 years or 6 years. And I emphasize that because I suspect many of you are advising students, if they're planning on starting college full-time, chances are they're going into it thinking that they're going to graduate in 4 years. I don't know of anybody who goes in as a full-time student and has a 6-year plan for finishing college. But the graduation rates at most colleges are going to be lower than you might think they should be. So definitely another statistic worth considering alongside all the other information. And again, if a college has a lower graduation rate, it doesn't mean you should throw it immediately off your list. It just means that should raise questions for you. And the 6-year graduation rate is often reported. It's the 150% time to degree completion rate. So that's often reported in the IPEDS data, which is the data that the College Navigator uses to provide this kind of information. The next question that we'll ask is, how likely am I to have close interactions with professors? You can get a sense of this from the student to faculty ratio. You're not going to see huge variance in the student-faculty ratio, but this college has a 15-to-1 student-faculty ratio. If you're comparing this to another college that has an 18-to-1 faculty ratio, that's actually kind of a substantial difference in this. Even though it's only a 3-student difference, it's typically an indicator that there's a lot more larger class sizes and fewer smaller class sizes. And you'll find this in the College Navigator right up at the top of the page. Again, as with all the other information, just because the college that you may like the best has the highest student faculty ratio doesn't mean you shouldn't go there. It should just have you answer some questions. This is a key, provide some key insight into the learning environment. And again, the admissions counselors or other people at the college will be able to answer questions about what the experience is like in classes at the college. This is one that I suspect many people aren't using this information, but also available through the College Navigator. How many other students are in the majors I'm interested in? The reason why I think this is important, it's really about viability. So here at this college, we have an Asian Studies major, and we have a biochemistry major, and we have a radiation biology major. These majors they all graduated last year, or the year of this report, they all graduated less than 5 students. So I think just from a practical perspective, it raises the question, like, geez, is this, if I start this program at this college, am I going to be able to finish it, or are they going to cancel it because it's not economically viable for the college, right? So there may be good answers for why the classes are so small. So for example, or why so few students graduate with it. So the Asian Studies minor is actually an interdisciplinary oriented kind of minor. So it's not that you need all of these classes or a department dedicated to Asian Studies, but there's one faculty member who oversees all the Asian Studies majors that are there, but all of the classes are actually interdisciplinary in nature. Similarly for biochemistry, that's as the name implies, that's biology and chemistry. So the fact is there's only 4 students there. Those 4 students are supported by both biology and chemistry departments. So there's enough support for that. Again, this is just information that you look at to try and raise questions. Questions that students and families can ask of the admissions counselors to get some answers about it. Point being that just because the college says that they have a major there, it may not be as robust as you think it is. So in this case, when you're graduating between 1 and 4 students a year in each of these majors, you're not likely to have many other students that are in your classes with you that are interested in the same major. And again, this for me just practically raises some concerns about, is that biochemistry major going to be around for a couple of years? So the admissions counselors will be able to answer these kinds of questions for you. And I think they're good questions. They're good questions for folks to answer. How diverse is the student body? So this is also found in the College Navigator in the enrollment section. They break down their enrollment by ethnicity or race, by age, and by location of residence, if they're in-state, out-of-state, foreign, etc. So this is going to be different for each person, really, but I think understanding what the context is and maybe comparing that to the demographics of your high school might help students understand how they might fit in terms of race, ethnicity, or the age. Here at this institution, 94% of the students are 24 years and younger, so mostly a younger undergraduate student-oriented population, and half of the students are from in-state. So just other information to consider. How much will it cost to attend this college? So this is information you can find from the College Navigator in the financial aid section. There's also a net price section in there. We're going to talk about in a second here. The net price calculator is actually a better tool to get more specific financially oriented kinds of information. But here, what you get from the College Navigator that's not available in the net price calculator, for example, is here. This is saying that for the reporting year here, 97% of all the students that started at this college, 97% of the freshmen received a scholarship of $17,626. So the question here isn't how do you qualify for a scholarship? The question here is how do you not qualify for a scholarship? Like how do you end up being the 3% of students that didn't get a scholarship here? And this scholarship is a hefty scholarship. The tuition here was $40,104, but the average discount for students here is $17,000. That's a 44% discount off the sticker price. 44%. So if your students aren't paying attention, if they're looking at private colleges and saying that they're too expensive, they may need to learn about what the difference is between the sticker price and the actual price, or the net price. And this information here can give you a quick glimpse into what that is without going through the entire net price calculator process, which can be a little bit cumbersome and unwieldy. So this gives you a quick glance at that. And again, the average, so what this provides you here is the average discount for the students at this college was $17,626. Obviously, and typically students that have a higher academic profile than the average at this college probably get more money, and students that are below the academic profile for this college probably get a little bit less money, but the average is a 44% discount, which is substantial. I know, and you probably heard this too, you probably hear it from parents every year, but I've had people in my own family who say, oh, we're not looking at any private colleges because they're all so much more expensive than state colleges. Well, that's because they didn't understand that you know, the sticker price at the private colleges, many private colleges, almost nobody pays the sticker price. There are some colleges where this number, the percent of students receiving aid, institutional aid, is 100%. Nobody pays the sticker price. So an important piece of information for people to consider. I've got 4 minutes before we switch to questions. So, and this is the net price calculator. You're all familiar with this. You're going to find it on each college's website, but this provides a handy little tool to find out where you can find links to those in one place through the collegecost.ed.gov. So just a handy little resource there. And then finally, as you're likely familiar with, the college scorecard, relatively new. It's been around for a few years, but still relatively new. A unique piece of information the college scorecard gives you is the average salary of graduates. So as it says here, the salary after completing depends on the field of study. So at this college, the people making $49,000 tended to major in science and business oriented kinds of majors. And the people at the lower end tended to major in more social science kinds of fields. But here I pulled out here, this is for the psychology degree. Information here, they make psychology majors here made $30,000 on average. And then it talks about what their debt was, what their median earnings were, and their loan repayment broken down by the month. In addition to giving the overall figure here, here's what that translates into in terms of a monthly payment, which can be helpful. So one place, I don't know if you're familiar with this, I love this website, I mentioned it earlier, College Results Online, actually pulls together all the information from the College Navigator. It uses the iPad's data essentially from the College Navigator and the College Scorecard, and it puts it all in one place. So it's a fantastic resource. It may not be the prettiest website in the world, but in terms of the kinds of information it assembles for you and the way that it assembles that information for you, it allows you to look at all of this information for the institutions or the colleges that you put on this list. So here we're looking at UMass Amherst, University of Vermont, and University of Rhode Island. And here we can see the differences in the retention rate, as Rich mentioned, 91% at UMass Amherst, down to 83% at the University of Rhode Island. We see similar kinds of differences in the 4-year and 6-year graduation rates. So we've also got, again, we've got all of these tabs here are information that you can compare across these colleges. But here we're looking at the retention and progression rates. We can also look at that college scorecard oriented kind of data, the financial outcomes in terms of the average salary. This is median earnings 10 years after entry. And how much of a loan debt students carry, kind of the median loan debt or essentially on average, how much loan debt they are carrying after they graduate from college. All useful information. We also have here the federal loan default rates, which gives you a sense of the longer term kind of economic viability of graduates, with students who are defaulting on their loans tending to not have as secure employment opportunities as people who do not default on their loans. So all that information available here through the collegeresults.org. Again, if it's a website you haven't visited before, definitely worth a look. Lots of fantastic information
Yeah,
tends to be a little bit slower in updating their information than the College Navigator, but so the data might be a little bit older, but most of these metrics don't change much from year to year. The exception, of course, will be next year when we figure out what the impact of COVID-19 is on all of these things. But in terms of years past, fantastic way to organize information for yourself or for the students and families that you're working with. So really quickly, 4 myths that we'll go through that we often hear from students and families. So the college I choose determines the next 4 years of my life. So this is a myth, because the fact is that students can do transfer from one college to another all the time. In fact, the national averages for this are that about 1 in 3 students transfer colleges at least once. Now, that said, it is of course better if people make the right decision the first time and don't have to transfer, because transferring can lead to lost credits and delayed graduation. But to think that a student, if they show up on their college campus and they're not satisfied with the experience that they're getting, to think that they're stuck there for 4 years isn't true, and it's really not accurate or helpful. So the next myth is I have to decide on a major before I get to college. Of course, it is, if you know what you want to study, that's fantastic. But the fact is, and I'll try to be brief about this, but the fact is that most 17 or 18-year-olds don't have enough information to make an informed career decision. They haven't had enough life experience. They haven't had enough career development in their lifetime to really understand this. And just the short way of saying this is essentially, I wish I could see you all now and ask you to raise your hands, but I would ask how many of you would have predicted when you were 17 or 18, would have predicted where you are now. And I know for me, that's not true. Like for Rich, I know it's not true. For many people, it's not true. And that's because as we get older and we have more experiences, our career path unfolds kind of in front of us. So
well, I think
expecting 17 or 18-year-olds to have the information to make, or to have the information to make this kind of a choice about a major is maybe not fair to expect. And B, the other piece is 1 in 3 students. So I mentioned 1 in 3 students. I'll give you a second here, Rich. 1 in 3 students transfer colleges. Also, we have 1 in 3 students change their major at least once. Of those students that declare a major at college, a third of them change their major at least once. Rich.
Well, I was just going to say quickly, thanks, Tim. So I have 3 daughters in their 30s, and one of the things that struck me is how much learning and development happens during the 20s. You know, and that a 16 or 17-year-old is really living in an empty closet when it comes to life experiences, labor market experiences, just emotional maturity. And we know that brain development wise, a lot is going on that doesn't really come to completion until much later. But where college is in our culture, it's jammed at that earlier age coming in. So I think, you know, so I would, and we don't have time to get into this, but I think it's really worth thinking about helping people kind of back off the ledge about that there's a lot that's going to happen after college, and that it's really about taking charge of your life and finding a direction and going for it and evolving as that happens.
And geez, we could talk for an hour on this alone, but there's time for people to explore things before they declare a major. Most college majors, science, technology oriented kinds of fields aside, most college majors are less than 1/3 of the total number of credits required for graduation. So there's room in there to do some exploring. So you don't need to rush into choosing a major that may be the wrong option for you. So we need to move ahead, Rich, sorry. And then we're going to get to questions here in just a minute. So another myth is there's only one college that's right for me. I think that puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on people. As Rich alluded to earlier, there's many good colleges to choose from, and where, you know, the colleges don't make you successful. It's the students who capitalize on the opportunities that are provided by the colleges. So Rich talked about Frank Bruni, who's a New York Times columnist who writes a bit in education and college choice. And he did, long story short, he did this research on where do CEOs of Fortune 500 companies come from, and found that they came from all over the place. They didn't all come from Harvard and Yale, they come from all over the place. So there's lots of good colleges to choose from. And the last one is, and this is for the students that maybe are on the fence about, is it worthwhile to go to college? And this is data from the Social Security Administration, actually. that shows that people with a bachelor's degree earn about $1 million more across their working lives than people with a high school diploma. I'm not a financial investor, but to me, if somebody said, geez, if you spend, let's go on the expensive side, if I invested, $100,000 now and I got $1 million and I got $1 million back in 30 years or 40 years, would that be a worthwhile investment? I would say, hell yeah, that's a worthwhile investment.
I do want
to get 10 times my money back. So
it's worth
college is too expensive. No doubt college is too expensive. I wish it were cheaper, but the fact is, for most people, it's a worthy investment.
Yeah. Just quickly saying, I do think to be concerned about overselling a four-year college degree. What's really clear
Yep.
is that for high skill, high wage jobs, you need post-high school training that can come in a lot of variety of different ways and end up making the kind of income you need to be able to buy a house, buy a car, be a full participating member in our
Yep.
holistic.
I think at the end of the day, like, going to college opens up more options for you. So electricians make a ton of money if you like being an electrician, if you like doing that kind of work. If you go to college, that prepares you to do a lot more occupations than just one. So
there's a big percentage of people with four-year college degrees that go back to community colleges to get training so they can get a job.
Yep. So thank you. Sorry, we went a little bit over. We got 5 minutes here for questions if folks have them. Thoughts, questions, reactions. Thank you very much for sticking with us.
Yeah.
Greatly appreciate it.
I do want to say too, as people are typing in questions, I went around to some of the college websites, admissions, just to see what was going on, probably what you're finding. And it seems it's highly variable. Some are all about the COVID and there's lots of things, and other places are well, it's business as usual, but there's an awful lot of online offerings. And so everybody is saying, please contact us, please contact us.
So Julie says, thank you all for coming and attending. We had Kevin. We will have, the recording will be available. Julie, I don't know how long the recording takes, but the recording will be available. If you come back to the webpage that described it, I think that's where you'll find a link to it. And we will work on getting a copy of this presentation there as well. So if you just want to download the slides without hearing Rich and I drone on, you can just do that too to get access to the information. So the recording should come out tomorrow, and I will work on the presentation and have it so that the slideshow here is available as well. Great. Well, thank you very much. If there's, we'll stick around for 3 more minutes. Julie, I don't know if you can turn off the recording. We'll stick around for a couple of minutes though if people want to ask.